Good morning, everyone. It is definitely interesting and quite a worthy initiative to be invited to this session. I must say so, and I can also underline that this topic is a topic that is worldwide interesting and important, not only for Turkey. I'm representing Norwegian PEN, and indirectly also PEN International. My colleague Eugene Schoulgin in the traffic, he will represent International PEN. We have monitored the development of free speech and rule of law in Turkey for many years. Personally, I have been to Turkey, first of all, on regular visits the last 3 to 4 years, but still this short period has given me many occasions to thought. And when a seminar questions how transparent the Turkish society seems to be, the transparency of the scandals and crisis is certainly not lacking. You will hardly be able to find an overview of crisis and democratic turbulence like this in any other country, disregarding the Arabic civil wars and local vassals threatened by Putin. The paradox is that the burdened NATO member Turkey has a people with stamina, integrity, and the desire for democratic transparency. The picture is just as multi-layered as it seems, sad but also full of hope. Were it not for the demanding cultural complexity, the untrained democratic reflexes, and a regime that takes the wrong turn in its search for centralized power, rather than democratically shared power with its people. Why does this happen? Is there a hidden political agenda and a lack of transparency regarding the political ambitions? Is that ambition a personal goal for a leader to gain power, using authoritarian rule as an instrument for achieving his goals? If so, then what are the goals? Have the crisis made them more visible, or at least created more transparency? It is evident that the current regime will lead Turkey to reduce secularity, a stronger central government, and a strengthened religious community, all done with instruments that justify the goal. They may seem tactically hidden. To what degree can the instruments then be considered democratic? Or do they provide a breeding ground for the lack of rule of law, forced self-censorship, and corruption? How does the Turkish regime define the ideal state? How far is the current regime willing to go to reach its goals? Let me offer my personal description of an undemocratic development, a kind of reverse transparency, the overview of the situation ranging from hope to frustration based on my own experience. Yes, there were democratic hopes in and outside Turkey when the AK party came to power, with a Turkey exhausted by repeated coups and military regimes. Yes, the power is being exercised, but not to build unity from scratch. On the contrary, the temptations of power also entices the new regime, like others before them, to prioritize authoritarian power from above instead of building democratic power from below, across ethnic and conflict. The authoritarian symptoms become increasingly evident in all its transparency. We witnessed the court cases sentencing journalists and publishers to years of custody on the grounds of manufactured evidence. We saw how the defense lawyers were threatened with prosecution if they required access to information to court cases they worked on. We saw how the police present in the courtrooms noted all critical comments from the spectators, using the information even resulting in imprisonment. We saw how hundreds of police officers were present in the courtroom of the Silivri prison in order to tame defense lawyers in open opposition. We have seen how anti-terror laws are being misused during custody and as basis for sentencing and rulings about privacy in criminal law. We are all familiar with the record high number of imprisonments of journalists, editors, publishers, and academics, resulting in years of custody without access to legal documents concerning the case. And the prison terms are for years, as you know. And when the election was upcoming, dozens of imprisoned journalists and other activists were all of a sudden released. Another proof of the arbitrary, a society without a stable and fair legal protection. We have seen how the penal code reads in Turkish and English, and how they differ in their legal significance. In the morning of 7th of June 2013, we are present in a Silivri courtroom, the size of a gymnasium, at the start of the trial against Dennis Sarakolo, son of a publisher, and many others. On the other side of the road, there is another courtroom where we witness the same day the proceedings against the accused in the Ergenekon case. In the evening, we are confronted with the demonstrations in the Gezi and Taksim the very same day. We are really experiencing immense contrasts and get an impression of the face of law in Turkey, indeed. The media lay low during the demonstrations, but they were not responsible for a voice from outside. As a consequence, we were interviewed and expressed critically that the atmosphere in Gezi and Taksim could easily have been turned into something positive in the beginning anyway, given admission of understanding from the regime. We realize that the demonstration in Taksim and Gezi, first of all, are cry of fear that freedom will disappear, that the hope of a society where diverse population could live side by side is substituted with a stricter, maybe even religious society. We attended by exclusive permission the sentencing in the Ergenekon case on the 5th of August last year. We witnessed how the parade of police and security forces in the fields around Silivri prison took on the proportion of the armies at Waterloo, where the lifelong sentences were handed down. Even the families, of course the media, the families of the convicted were excluded. Lack of transparency of the court showed that the regime had something to hide, and again. Through media, the internet and international reports, we are familiar with the alliance and conflict also between the Gülen movement and the Prime Minister Erdogan. It shows how friendship can turn into a fight for power. The weapons used were surveillance, tape recordings, leaks and allegations of corruption against the Prime Minister, his family and several ministers. We read about the Prime Minister's surreal counter-move against Gülen supporters as a revenge or fear of the corruption accusations. We experience the forced self-censorship in Turkey, the most daunting and pragmatic weapon against freedom of expression, happening through the government economic persecution and punishment of critical media. With the tax penalties on media owners, also conglomerates, editors, and that will also hit journalists and editors, making even the strongest companies to buckle. It all happens in full transparency. Understand it if you can. Self-censorship is really the greatest threat to freedom of expression and actual democracy in our time. That has to be underlined and reminded. We read how Erdogan uses his corrupted media and his power with media to secure his position. 41% is on his side these days. Evidently, he did win the local election in March, despite the counterattack of the Gül movement, with his market share approximately 27% we know. We are facing a presidential election, although without constitutional amendments, thanks to Gezi, Taksim, and other unrest, and in spite of what you called the CNN's penguins and other forms of self-censorship. Will Erdogan stand for election? Of course he will. That is what he not only wants, he neither can or wants anything else. Otherwise, he might even be prosecuted. It was indeed a very bad timing of Erdogan advisor repeatedly to kick an arrested of the mining accident held down by the police, a man mourning his dead few months ahead of the presidential election. To finish, the attempts of Erdogan regime to prevent transparency in Turkey and abroad had not worked. There is more than sufficient information to make one upset about the democratic decay. With just a few clicks, most of us can obtain all the necessary information we are looking for. Will Erdogan's political power then and abuse last? Can it last? Serious threats to democracy in our time is the economic neoliberalism. I have to underline this. Don't talk too much about economics right now. That will be done later on, I hope. Religious rivalry and the constant personal attraction to obtain power. It is our job as activists in support of human dignity, freedom of religion, freedom of speech and democracy to keep on pointing out these intrusions. Otherwise, abuses and violations will continue, and clearly in Erdogan's Turkey. But, dear friends, in the end, the responsibility does not come from outside. It is all yours, and it should not last. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, William. Maybe we could open up for some questions.
Maybe too early.
Just to start a discussion in terms of what you've just explained. Don't know if the organizers agree. Maybe later on. Okay.
No.
Yes. My presentation is slightly different from William's. I'm Nathalie Losekoot. I represent Article 19, a freedom of expression organization and access to information advocacy organization based from London. Dear colleagues and friends, as I mentioned yesterday, Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights encompasses also the right to access to information. And as one of the speakers yesterday mentioned, at international level, and specifically relevant for Turkey, the Council of Europe, in its rulings by the Court of Human Rights, favors openness and, as such, the right to information. And considering Turkey has one of the highest numbers of complaints in front of the European Court of Human Rights, it's a very important instrument and mechanism for Turkish citizens to get justice in many rights, but also with regards to freedom of expression and access to information. Yesterday, we heard many testimonies about Gezi Park, about the Soma tragedy, about LGBT, about individual voices who are either targeted because they raise their voice, because they're looking for answers, or because they speak out for themselves or for others with a different opinion. As an organization, Article 19 wants to protect exactly that, the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas. Importantly, these ideas don't necessarily are in line or are the same as ours. Religion, ideologies do not need protection. However, those individuals that want to express their opinion do. Looking at what we heard yesterday, I'll look at a number of interconnecting issues and end with the question, which I posed yesterday. Where do we go from here? And hello, Eugene.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay, that's absolutely fine. So yesterday I posed the question, where do we go from here, from this particular gathering, with solidarity as part of a group of organizations, national media, human rights organizations, with international media and human rights organizations, and individual journalists. In a way, the protests around Gezi Park a year ago were an eye-opening moment for both the international and, I believe, the national media, as well as the national and international public. As it showed, the lack of transparency in decision-making in urban planning, the possible corruption behind such schemes, and actually ongoing lack of transparency, whereby audits, information about decision-making have been removed from individual groups. Secondly, the authorities have a hold on the media. The lack of transparency in the ownership of media and the relationship between politics and business became adamantly clear. Fourth, the lack of accountability of the police. Again, a sign of a lack of transparency, as there has been no independent investigations in police abuse, including the killings of protesters. The importance of a free medium, again, a sign about the importance of transparency, and in this case it was the social media, which was able to show, and was the only medium at the very beginning, showing reality, and it didn't show penguins. The effect of the Gezi Park protests, the reaction of the authorities, and the ongoing attempts by individuals and social media, civil society, activist groups to seek transparency should not be underestimated in the current climate in Turkey. I believe the picture that came out of Gezi Park protests should be a mirror for Turkey's level of media freedom, openness, and transparency. I believe the second development is clearly linked to this. The strength of social new media and the ability of its information sharing is not that easy to suppress. And I believe that not only the Turkish authorities would have tried to put a lid on the December leaked tapes, which indicated corruption at the highest levels. The internet, when it is free, is such an important tool for sharing information, such an important tool to ensure transparency, that it needs to be protected. Lastly, I wanted to mention two sides, so to say, in the realm of the right to access to information, including and particularly transparency. That is, that access, the possibility to ask a question. And I believe that in Turkey, that is a difficult process. Because although there is a law, the answers that come out of questions are completely lacking, even at the highest level, where parliamentary questions, such as those with regards to SOMA and other life-defining questions, remain unanswered. The responsibility of public authorities to inform the public, to provide information on their websites of decisions, of reports, any information that is important in the public interest, is the other side of access to information. Someone said it eloquently yesterday. The role of the state is to be in the public interest, not in its own interest, and definitely not in the personal interest of government officials. Looking back at Gezi Park, if there had been a process of public consultation, information sharing, enabling participants of all stakeholders, would the result have been the same? The question remains, what is the next step? I believe there is one, and that's looking specifically at international level. There is a convention that Turkey has not acceded to, which would be a very important moment for the government to show that it's interested in providing access to information, public participation, and fighting corruption. And for the public to actually be able to join in that very important decision making, specifically around environmental issues. I mentioned it shortly yesterday. This is the Convention on Access to Information, Public Participation in Decision Making, and Access to Justice in Environmental Matters. I believe, as a call to the Turkish government, and I believe in the light of transparency, I'm sure that someone is here that will hear that question, that is part of the current government. This call is for Turkey to, as soon as possible, adhere to this particular convention and make sure that everyone in Turkey, not just the government, has access to important information and access to justice. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I ask for excuse to be late. It is one of the other main problems in Turkey is the traffic jam, so I've been stuck today. I prepared a very long speech. I have left it at home, not because I have lost my mind, but because I found it, I think I'm right to say that my dear friends and colleagues here have already said so many clever things about transparency and the need of transparency in all societies, not only in Turkey, of course. And also because the more I thought about this topic, although it is so extremely important, of course it is crucial to all developed democracy to conduct transparency. Most of the facts which we can be able to tell you, you know it already. You see, that is what I find both so depressing and so encouraging in Turkey, is that the difference between you and many other countries who are still not, you can say, have a fulfilled democratic mind seen from the government's point of view. You you have it all. I mean, you know all the things we are going to tell you here. You already know it. You know it better than us, and you live it. So I mean, you are the ones who have the experience. And I've been asked to talk about how Turkey is looked from a transparency point of view from the abroad. And that is also difficult, because you see, I happen to come from Norway, just as William here. We are a little part on the outskirts of Europe on the other side. And what we think and how we read the society and democracy is not completely the same as, for instance, in Italy, or in Portugal, or in Ireland, or in, for that matter, in France or England. So it is a very complicated issue, of course. But it is some ground elements which I think is always there. And one of them, of course, is the fact that without transparency, you will have conspiracy instead. And that is actually, I think, one of the main diseases in the Turkish society, that you are always, since you do not have the transparency, you have to cultivate conspiracy theories, and since you do not have the facts, you go from what you think could be under what is said, under what is claimed, and then you create a society which you never know actually who to believe, who to trust, and you have to build up your own individual picture of the society you live in. Just as true as it is that you have the need of beautiful song. The need of this transparency, it is of no use if it is not the will and the possibilities from the authorities, from the state, from the government, to take the consequences. I mean, only to know what is right and what is wrong is not enough. You also have to have the ability to build on what you know is right and wrong. And I would like to tell you a story which says a lot, because I think this transparency today, taking into consideration what we have learned about, for instance, the United States and CIA's way of handling these things through Snowden and through Manning and through the other whistleblowers, we can see that this problem is a universal problem. It's an international problem. It's not only a Turkish problem. And this idea from governments and from state to think that they have the right to identify what is right and what is wrong for their own population without taking into consideration what is good for them, this tendency has grown during the last, let's say, 10 years. At least the knowledge from the average individual has grown about the lack of this transparency, which is everywhere, and which also underlines what Noam Chomsky, who we'll listen to, I think, a little later today, says: you must always be very suspicious about what comes from any kind of government or state or official sources. But as I said, it is not enough to have this transparency if you don't have the will and the capacity to do something about it. I can tell you this story about Italy. We had this journalist, Francesco Gatti, who Fabrizio Gatti, who traveled from Chad through the desert of Sahara, through the desert of Libya, together with the illegal immigrants. He was nearly killed. It was a horrible book to read. It's called Bilal. I can really recommend it to you all to read it. I have never read anything as that shaking as that. And in the very end, he decides to pretend to be one of those who are drowning outside the island of Lampedusa. He is rescued by Italian fishermen. He ends up in what I would call a concentration camp in Lampedusa, where they put all these illegal immigrants, and they treat them not very much better than they treated the clientele in the concentration camps in Germany, beside the gas chambers, of course. And after some months, they are giving a paper saying that after 6 days they have to leave Italy. They are kicked out of this camp and left to themselves. And what happens then? The mafia, the Italian mafia, takes over, and they grasp them, and they treat them as modern slaves. I mean, literally modern slaves. They're not provided with any kind of health care, no money, very little food. If they try to run away or if they try to protest, they are beaten up or killed. And that is what is going on. And that was revealed in 2007. In the middle of Western Europe, you have organized slavery. That is in itself, of course, totally unacceptable, and it is a scandal seen from any angle. But what is even worse than that is that, according to a newly made research, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. This traffic of slavery is going on in 2017. 14, 7 years after. So you see, although everybody knows about this, nothing happens. Nothing happens. So this, I think, these two elements are crucial today. One, that we have a lively opposition who is willing to criticize not only other countries but also their own society. That goes for us in PEN, that goes for PEN as such. We are always criticizing governments wherever something to be criticized is at place. And that is one thing. The other thing is to make it possible for a change, for a real political change in your own society. And to achieve that, you have to look forward, not backward. And I know that, for instance, in Turkey, it is a tendency today to try to find your way forward by going back to the Ottoman Empire and things like that. I mean, to try to find some solution from history, saying that history always repeats itself, blah blah blah, which is, of course, to a certain limit, it is true. You have to know your history, but it's a very dangerous way to go, because I mean, no, I talk from myself, not from a pen or from Western world or whatever. I say this is the crucial thing, that we have to find a way to build a stronger society tomorrow, either to make the state and those who are responsible at the moment being for the way the country is running, to understand that things has to be done, or and for the opposition to gain forces and to really find ways to reach into the heart of the matter. And that is where I link up to what you said and what I'm sure William had said before I arrived, that Gezi Park and what all these things which has happened here and which makes us in the outside world, it's nearly difficult for us to believe that this is true. You see, that has been a very big problem for me during the last 20 years when I've tried to tell people in Scandinavia what's going on in Turkey. They simply don't believe me, because it's so far from the way of life we are used to in our societies. They say, "Oh, Eugene, he is a writer. He's exaggerating. You shouldn't trust a man like him." I mean, and now they start to understand that what I have said and what many others, not only me, of course, has said during all these years is actually the truth. It is like this. I remember 2 years ago, I took William with me to Silivri, to a mass trial there. And of course, William was absolutely He didn't believe his ears and eyes what he saw, because it's so far out. So that is difficult to understand how far it has gone. And of course, I will end by saying that to create a functioning democracy, you need a society built on justice, built on rights. The judicial situation in Turkey today is, to be very kind to you, I would say it is a mess. It's a total mess. As a matter of fact, I think it's worse than that. It is a mockery of judiciary. You have no equality before law. If you do something wrong in one part of the country, you get one kind of sentence. If you do it in another part of the country, you get another sentence. If you are a person who is well known to be a outspoken oppositional, you are in much more danger than if you are, let's say, a well-off businessman saying exactly the same thing. So it's no equality before the law. And also one more thing, this very, very unlucky tendency to judge people from what you think they might have done. You put them in prison for years and years and years without a trial, without giving them any real explanation why they sit there, and then you just kick them out. As the well-known writer and lawyer and human rights defender in Diyarbakir, Mr. Muharrem Erbey, said when they released him a month ago, after 4.5 years in detention, he said, "I never understood why I was arrested. Nobody told me during these 4.5 years actually why I was sitting here, and now I'm got out of the prison, and nobody has explained me why I am free." So in this country, you are blown into a cell. If the political winds blows in one direction, if the political wind blows in another direction, they blow you out of the same prison. And this, of course, is something which has to change. And all what I'm saying now has, of course, in its heart to do with transparency. That you are willing to discuss things, to discuss the situation, and don't see criticism as something dangerous, something which is hostile in its character. Because in all functioning societies, criticism is actually the body, the tool which make society grow and society live. So this is what I can tell you. I have nothing more clever to say than this, I'm afraid. But this is the result of at least 20 years and experiences with my beloved Turkey. And I am an optimist of nature. I have to be it. If I would not be that, I would shoot myself or something. So I prefer to think that in the next years we will have even a better and more outspoken society, civil society in Turkey, who helps a listening government, a listening state, to make this country what it really deserves to be. Thank you very much.
I received a little note, and we have about 10 minutes. I don't know, William, Eugene, do you want to take questions? Yes?
Absolutely.
So if there's anyone that has a particular question, if there's a microphone somewhere.
Benimki aslında soru olmayacak. Bir kere heyetinize çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Özellikle PEN yetkililerine, Eugene ve William'ı bundan bir yıl önce Ragıp Zarakoğlu'nun hapisten çıkarılmasında oynadıkları rol için, yani bir hafta 10 gün geç kalınsaydı çok ağır bir hastalıktan Ragıp'ı kaybedebilirdik. Dolayısıyla bu kamuoyu önünde bu teşekkürlerimi sunuyorum. Çünkü çok stratejik bir rol oynadınız onun serbest bırakılmasına. İkincisi, Nathalie Hanım'ın söylediği
Sorry.
Bundan sonra ne olacak? Nathalie Hanım'ın söylediği soruyla ilgili ben şahsen bir entelektüel olarak bundan sonra ne yapacağımı söyleyebilirim ki bu aslında pek çok insanın kafasından geçen ve bir çıkış yolu olarak Gezi'den sonra hayata geçirebilecek kadar önemli bir konu ve yol kat edecek. Bundan sonra girilebilecek yollardan en önemlisi demokratik özerklik üzerine çalışmak olacak. Yani benim özellikle yapacağım iş zaten bu konferanslar bittikten sonra ilk yapacağım iş o olacak. Uzun zamandır da üstüne çalışıyorum ve Gezi de bunun tetikleyicisi oldu. Özellikle Eugene'in de çok güzel anlattığı gibi William'ın da aynı şekilde Türkiye'deki siyasi yapının gitgide totaliterleşmesi ve faşistleşmesi ve bundan bir türlü kurtulmanın demokratik yollardan zor olması nedeniyle, daha doğrusu seçimle kurtulmanın hemen hemen imkansız gibi görünmesi nedeniyle oyunun kurallarını değiştirmek gerekiyor bizim açımızdan. Yani Batı'da yaşayan Türkiye'liler olarak gene demokrasi yolunda ama demokratik özerklikle bu işin üstesinden gelebileceğimizi sanıyorum. Bunun için tabii yeni partiler kurulmalı ya da kurulu partiler bu yola girmeli. Yeni kadrolar yetişecek, aydınlar bu yola girecek, medya bu şekilde kullanılacak, kamuoyu aydınlatılacak ve böyle bir çıkış yolu olduğuna inanıyorum. Ama bu tabii bir 10-15 yıl sürebilir. Pasifik bir yoldur, yani barışçıl bir yoldur. Yoksa Türkiye tabii gördüğünüz gibi iki kampın birbirinden nefretiyle çok tehlikeli noktalara gidebilir. Ancak bunu aşmanın yolu da demokratik özerklikten geçiyor diye düşünüyorum. Bu legal bir yoldur. Türkiye 1995 yılında Avrupa Konseyi'nin kararlarını da imzaladığı için bu yola girmenin herhangi bir siyasi olarak bir sakıncası da yoktur. Sadece bunu bilgi için size sundum. Çünkü bu hareket çok dinamizm kazanacak önümüzdeki yıllarda. Burada gördüğüm kadarıyla Ankara'dan, bakanlıktan da, başbakanlıktan da gelen insanlar var. Mesajımızı onlara da iletiyoruz. Biz bu yolda gideceğiz ve sizi pek fazla ciddiye almayacağız. Ciddiye almadan kendi yolumuzda gideceğiz. Siz de kendi İslam Cumhuriyeti'ni kurma yolunda gidersiniz. Biz kendi demokratik Türkiye'yi kurma yolunda gideceğiz. Çok mersi.
Question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't grasp the beginning of this intervention by Errol, so I don't know if it was a question or not involved in it. No, it was not. Good. Fine.
Yes. You would need to speak in the microphone. No, but otherwise they can't translate it into Turkish. Ah.
Denesin. Buna ulaştın. Ha, çöz.
Bilgi edinme hakkıyla ilgili bir sözleşmeden bahsettin Nathalie. Ben hangi sözleşme onu anlayamadım. Onu bana söyleyebilir misin?
Yes. It's the Aarhus Convention, which was signed in 1987. And it's, as I mentioned, it specifically focuses on public participation, access to information, and justice in environmental matters. I think we have time for one more question or comment.
Erol Önderoğlu. Sorumu Türkçe soracağım tabii. Türkiye'de her şeyden önce gitgide bir Türkiye sivil toplumu içerisinde ortak geleceğe dönük olarak işlev yapan sivil toplum kuruluşları içerisinde bir yarılmadan söz edebiliriz. Onlar da politik olarak bu ortamdan etkileniyorlar ve siyasi partiler nasıl kendi içlerinde bir uzaklaşma ve çatışma yaşıyorsa bugünkü Türkiye sivil toplumu da bu çatışmadan çok yakın şekilde etkileniyor. En dar anlamda gazeteciler bile kendi gazeteci örgütleri içerisinde birbirlerinin yüzüne bakamaz hale geldiklerini görüyoruz. Şimdi Uluslararası Sivil Toplum Kuruluşu'nun değerli temsilcileriyle bir araya gelmişken kısaca her birinizden belki yanıt almak üzere şunu sormak istiyorum. Türkiye'deki ihlalleri izleyip bunlarla ilgili periyodik tavırlar geliştirmenin dışında acaba ortamın yumuşatılması ve Türkiye'deki sivil toplumun iktidarın vermekte zorlandığı değerinin güçlendirmek için, artırmak için sizlerin nasıl bir tavır geliştirebileceğinizi merak ediyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
Yeah. I would definitely not say that I have the key to that question. But I think it is important to remind ourselves that everything starts and ends in a way with the leadership. And from that point of view, it is somehow the responsibility is your own. And the only democratic way to go forth is, of course, an election. There does not exist any other acceptable solutions. The problem is, of course, that the media that should distribute, channelize, and present the views in a debate are completely corrupted. Corrupted by the structure of the economy, the media owned by big conglomerates, partly controlled again, directly and indirectly by the government, because of threats or gifts of economic kind. So therefore, I think it is actually the only hope somehow is to create arenas where criticism is evident, that also time is natural. Gezi and Taksim was, of course, an arena. But Turkey should be a democratic country, and there might be other views in the country. That makes the conflict deep and difficult. But somehow, the start of the AK party was so promising, because we all thought, and in most countries, and even more in the world today when people are moving, are different, are multiple. But in the beginning we thought all that, or many of us anyway, that the new Turkey would be with room and would create a country with room for everyone, with tolerance and balance. Different religions, different grade of religions, secularity, Turks, Kurds, and so forth. And this society you don't have today. And what is really, if I don't answer your question now, but let me just conclude. What is really, I would say, exciting is a positive word. I would say scary is what will happen if the Prime Minister of the day is moving from his position to the presidential position, creating a federal presidency with a lot of power, and if he's continuing the line he has started. I'm very personal now about the man in having the responsibility, but I think we have to be quite clear that the risk is there and the election is up to you. There must be created an arena, and you have the chance, the democratic chance at least, to create debate and understanding on broad base in Turkey to stop this kind of continuity.
I was told we have to stop at 3.
Okay.
But you can maybe 2 words, very short.
Well, I got to 2 words. As we say in Norway, if 2 Norwegian meets, very soon 3 opinions will occur. I am not 100% in line with William, although I see his point and I agree in that. But I think that Errol's question was, how can the international community do to help in this situation? I think we can help by showing the rest of the world the work done by all this this awake opposition in this country, to show our support to you, not to the state of Turkey, but to you who wants really to transform Turkey. Not only to criticize, but also to see that we know how strong you are. But what can we do to help you to get even stronger? That, I think, is a very important task to be done by organizations like us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all. Ara vermiyoruz. Devam ediyoruz. Çok teşekkürler konuşmacılarımıza. Şimdi de Türkiye'de çok ses getiren ve dünyada basın özgürlüğüyle ilgili özgürlük haritasını hazırlayan Freedom House'un yöneticisi Dr. Karin Deutsch-Karleka ile söyleşmek üzere CNN Türk moderatörü Nevşin Mengü'yü panel masasına davet ediyorum ve Karin, please help yourself. Buyurun, çok teşekkürler.
Hi.